Namaste and Satnam to you all. Welcome to temple service. I did a bit of tech checking beforehand, and it seems that we're not really going to be able to play videos today, but just wanted to let you guys know that everyone is welcome and loved here. And let's go ahead and jump right in. So I'll start with welcoming the Buddhas to our temple. We respectfully welcome Amida Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome the Buddhas of all times and places to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. Next, I'll read out the 6 paramitas. Those who know them can join me. Giving, may I be generous and helpful. Guidance, may I be guided by the Buddhist precepts. Tolerance, may I regard the mistakes of others with sympathy. Perseverance, may I do my best in all things. Meditation, may I reflect deeply on my life through the Buddhist teachings. Insight, may I understand the meaning of Namu Amida Butsu. And now we'll continue on to the Bodhisattva vows. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. Alright. In place of the Sambridjo chant, we'll just do this triple refuge. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Welcome back, beloved Sangha. In recent weeks, we have walked together through right view, right intention, and right speech. This week, we step into right action, where our values become visible and our path becomes embodied. Right action asks us, how do we live what we believe? Not in theory, but in everyday life, through conscious choices. The Buddha defined right action as engaging in ethical conduct that causes no harm. He specifically highlighted 3 foundational principles. Do not kill, honor life in all forms. Do not steal, respect boundaries and what belongs to others. Do not engage in sexual misconduct. Honor sacred relationships and consent. But beyond these basic vows, right action invites a deeper devotion. Do we live in a way that nurtures peace? Do our actions protect the vulnerable? Do our choices reflect our spiritual values? It's not about being perfect. It's about living in alignment. Every time we choose compassion over reaction, peace over pressure, generosity over greed, we walk the noble path. Right action is sacred activism. It turns meditation into movement, prayer into practice, and Dharma into daily life. going to go ahead and prepare us for our meditation. So I want you to go ahead and bring to mind any blockages you may have, anything that you're struggling with at the moment, anything that you feel has been hampering you, or just, anything that you don't recognize. That you feel like something has been in your path, and just to have that intention of letting that go, have that intention of releasing whatever may be blocking you. There we go. Down. All right. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we practice what is called the infinity breath, which is we start by breathing out all that stale energy, forming that lower part of the 8, and then we hold in our center, and then we breathe in that bright, beautiful creator light all around us, and then we hold that in our center, and we breathe out, but this time we're circulating that energy through us, and we hold once more, and we continue that pattern of breathing in, hold, breathing out, hold, breathing in, hold, breathing out, hold. And for this, I invite you all to stand or sit grounded. When you inhale, feel the intention of I walk with clarity. When you exhale, feel the intention of I live with love. Visualize the breath moving down through the soles of the feet, connecting to the earth. Feel anchored, strong, steady. With each breath, affirm, my actions are aligned, my choices are safe. I'm just going to let you go ahead and do that for a little bit. And you can all do your breathing at your own pace. Next, I would like to move into the meditation for today. Close your eyes. Imagine reviewing your day as if watching a film. What were your actions loving? Where were they rushed or reactive? No judgment, just observation. Now ask, what is one sacred action I can take today? Just let that answer arise within you. Alright. And for those of you who are done, you can go ahead and feel yourself come back to yourself. Slowly open up your eyes and return to us. I'm going to go ahead and bring us our mindfulness for the week. What I have here is your spiritual journey, and it says here, we are all spiritual all of the time because that is what we are. Spirit having a human experience, not humans having a spiritual experience. However, each person's spiritual journey has to be taken at a pace and in the way that suits him or her. I'll go ahead and show this for you guys if you want to read it. It's just something for us to meditate on for the week to come. All right. over the mindfulness homework for this week. So number 1 is daily sacred action. Each day this week, choose one intentional action that reflects right action. Examples are feeding someone in need, cleaning up trash, calling someone to offer love, or being present with your child. Number 2 is journal reflection. What habits do I want to release because they no longer align with my highest self? Number 3 is Dharma in action practice. Do one task this week with full mindfulness, whether washing dishes, gardening, or walking. Ask, what does it feel like when I slow down and act with reverence? Now, as a final blessing, beloveds, the most powerful sermon is the life you live. Let your hands become extensions of your heart. Let every step echo peace. Let every act be a prayer. All right. Thank you all for joining me. And I'll go ahead and show you the services we provide here at the Lotus Flower Wellness Temple if you want to stop by. So I've got this right here. Shows all that we have on offer. With that, namaste, satnam to you all. I wish you all a wonderful week. For those of you staying on for our discussion podcast, just sit tight. We'll go ahead and set up and we'll get right going with that. Testing. Yeah, that works. All right. So now we'll go ahead and get started with our discussion podcast after the service. My name is Quinn, and this is Miguel. So we're going to go ahead and discuss the service. Miguel, do you have any thoughts or anything you want to say?
Well, do not kill, do not steal, do not commit adultery. Those are 3 major commandments in the Bible, you know. And I mean, it's just kind of, it's one of those things that you feel like should be just common sense for a lot of people because, I mean, you know, obviously you shouldn't kill anyone, you know, and it's, you shouldn't steal, you know, and I mean, it's just natural morals that we go through. That's, it's just one of those things. It's like you feel like it should be common sense, but not all the time, you know, because sometimes life's not so cut and dry, you know. It's like someone might feel like they're justified in in harming somebody, or it might be accidental. So certainly intentions have a lot to do with things. And I mean, obviously that's why we even have the judicial system, because we might do something that's illegal by the letter of the law, or a sin in the Bible, but it's a lot of times our intentions really do matter. I mean, and I've heard plenty of cases where people have stolen just simply just to survive. Just people who they're hungry, and so they feel the need to steal, or someone's fears for their life, and so they defend themselves, and a quarrel turns into a very severe incident, and someone ends up dying. Just all these things, and obviously even the whole thing about misconduct. It's one of those things where if you're living in a way that's if you're living in such a way where you divorce, get married, get divorced, get married, then what ends up happening is you create these broken families, and or even just I have all these partners and I'm just living unhinged. I take the risk of getting an STD or some other disease attached to these unrighteous actions.
Yeah, I feel like a baseline here, if we were to tie all this together, to say one thing, it's live responsibly, and I feel like there are ways that there are times when things might happen, you might end up doing one of these things or whatever. It's not the end of the road. It's not the end of the world. You can always start fresh. You can always start anew, no matter where you are on your journey. But this is more to pay attention to what you're doing, right? And be sure that it is good for yourself and for others. To pay attention to is it really worth it to do what you're doing? Does it, will it have the effects that you intend it to have? Or might there be some harm done by what you're doing? Just take stock of your actions. Pay attention. Are they true to you? Are they true to who you are? Are you really being yourself in taking these actions? Are you doing this because someone else told you you couldn't? Or are you doing this because you were pressured into it? To take responsibility for your own actions, to take responsibility and make sure that, one thing in the world that's for certain, for all people, is consequence. Regardless of whether you think you're doing the right thing or not, consequence is always there. And you want to make sure that if you're going to face consequences, you're doing something that aligns with you. Hello, welcome in. We're just doing our after-service discussion. So you can feel free to look around, will be done shortly.
Yeah, when we live in sin, there's always going to be some negative consequence. You know, sometimes it's legal ramifications, but more often than not, you know, the physical, emotional, mental ramifications oftentimes is consequence enough. You know, if I do something that I know is wrong and then I still do it anyways, you know, more often than not, it's going to hurt me, or it's going to hurt someone else, and that guilt of hurting somebody else,
Have a good one.
that, and then that breeds animosity between you, and that negativity just abounds because you're doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing, you know it's wrong, and you still purposely hurt them. Or even if it's just something that's, you know, it might be an addiction problem. You know it's going to hurt you, and you still do it anyways for that instant gratification. Or it might even be just something where it seems okay, and you don't even realize that there's any consequences, you know, because it just might be something that makes you feel good.
Right.
Or something that'll give you immediate gain, and you don't really see the long-term consequences of that.
Yeah, something to pay attention to is every action that we take has consequences, both minor and major. You know, a lot of consequences are just a matter of cause and effect. Like, you know, we brush our teeth every day and our teeth remain healthy and clean. You know, we take regular showers and we smell nice. You know, those are consequences. Like, consequences aren't always bad, but it's important to be aware of what the consequences of your actions are and if they are truly worth the action itself. You know, the Ten Commandments in the Bible, I feel like is just pretty much a list of common sense things. Like, it's things that will keep you out of trouble. You know, as justified as some killing may be, you know, as much as it may seem in the moment that, you know, acting in certain ways sexually is right, or you can't resist it. Like, it's important to keep stock of the consequences, because those kinds of things can lead to some pretty big ones. I think that's the main thing that the Ten Commandments outlines, is just some of the biggest consequences that you can face. One of them is do not bear false witness, which is not to say do not lie, but don't tell a lie about somebody else. You know, don't say someone did something to you that they didn't. Don't go around accusing someone in order to get back at them or what have you. It will backfire back onto you. And you know, for a Buddhist philosophy, acting with right intention, acting with right action, it brings good karma onto you as well. You know, like, you do good, you get good in return. That means acting in alignment with yourself. That means acting with consideration for others. That means taking stock of what you say and when and how it will affect people. And being honest. That means, you know, just when you take action, being responsible with that action. And, sometimes we have to act in ways that we know will bring bad consequences. But you want to be sure if you ever have to make that decision. You want to be certain that that is the best decision that you can make. I think a lot of times we make decisions out of urgency, the sense that we have to do it right away. And very rarely is that the case. Like, oftentimes there are situations where we can afford to delay some moments to think about it, to reconsider, is this really the best option? Is this really the best decision I can make right now? And so, it's important to take those kinds of pauses, to take those moments to not just immediately react, but to act with intention, to act in alignment with what's true to ourselves.
Yeah, a lot of times, people will try to justify their actions of why they've done something wrong, because to them it's easier than trying to understand the situation as a whole, And like, if I've heard situations of people justifying, them killing somebody. They'll say, well, I don't agree with this person's lifestyle, or I don't like this person of this particular group, or I just thought this person was a bad person because of these particular reasons. And so, and so it's easy to justify that rather than, sitting down and just trying to understand this person, trying to make amends, forgiving them, understanding them. It's so easy to cast that judgment, and say, okay, why are you doing this?
Right.
Or I know that you're different than me. Let's try to figure each other out.
Yeah.
And so if I hurt them because I don't understand them, then that causes a lot of problems, and so a lot of times we hate the things that we don't understand, and we hate the things that we wish we could change, and so if we tried to understand it, then we could realize, hey, obviously this person's going through something, or this person has had bad experiences at a certain area that causes them to act that way, and
yeah, and it is very important to try and understand people, to, listen to them, to recognize where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with their ideology. In many cases we can get caught up in our own circle, and we can fall into the same pattern of thought because that's all we're ever hearing. But it is important to consider the other side of things. And, as far as like I won't deny that there are situations where, maybe you're protecting someone, and maybe you don't intend to kill somebody, but in the act of trying to protect another person, that's the only way you find yourself to be able to do so. And, it's not something done out of malice. It's not something done out of ill intent. But, those survival situations come up, and I personally am not going to condemn somebody who finds themselves with their back up against that particular wall for causing harm to somebody out of a need to protect themselves or to protect another person. However, this is where it's important to be responsible, to recognize, are the consequences worth it? You know, if you have to do one of these things, recognizing that there are consequences, you know, are those consequences worth it? And many times they're not. You know, many times there are other ways, there are other things that you can do. You know, there's time to think about things, to consider things, to figure out what action you're going to take. But when there isn't time, when you make that snap decision, I think it is important to be willing to forgive yourself, even if you make one that you regret, because snap decisions are hard. It's something that, you know, you can work towards training yourself to be able to respond better in those situations, but you won't always be in the best place. And, you know, it won't always be easy. So, like, I just want to acknowledge that that is the case. You know, you should try your best to be responsible in your choices, in your actions. To recognize that this is the action that I align with, that I am behind 100%. And there is no better action that I can think to take than this one. You know, even be willing to get feedback from around you if it's something you're able to share with others. Be willing to get feedback if you feel like something's off or it's not quite there.
Impulse control is very difficult for people a lot of times, you know, and because sometimes we do things just spur of the moment, you know, either because my wild desires compel me to do so, or I feel like I'm right in my actions in the moment, not really thinking about the overall consequences. And
Right.
so, but impulse control requires a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just requires you to stop and ask yourself, is this worth it? Is this okay? Am I going to hurt anyone? Am I going to hurt myself? What is the short-term consequences? What's the long-term consequences? Is it worth the risk?
Right.
And if it's not worth the risk, you know, then it's easy for you to just tell yourself, okay, well, I've thought it through. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do it. And then after that, then the discipline just kind of falls into place because your right thinking becomes right actions as a result of just taking a little bit of time to stop and actually contemplate what you want to do or what you're considering doing.
Yeah, and I feel like you know, with impulses, like there are moments where, like, you know, you don't have much time to make a decision, you know, where you are limited in that sense. But there are many situations where that's not the case, and you may feel a certain impulse, but, you know, it's important to recognize, is this impulse harmful to me? Is this impulse harmful to others? And there are good impulses. There are times when your impulse is right, when it brings you to good places. But there's also times when, like, you know, acting on impulse can put you into more difficult situations. They can complicate things. They can get you in trouble. They can cause many different consequences. So it's important to know, like, when and when not to go along with an impulse.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's easy for people to make excuses why they want to do something wrong, or even make excuses of why they shouldn't do something good, because more often than not, what the good thing to do is harder to do than the bad thing, and giving into your impulses is pretty easy. And there certainly is a spiritual aspect, because there are good impulses and there are bad impulses. You know, I might just randomly, out of spur of the moment, be like, oh, you know, I want to give this homeless man $5, and you know, it's just a spur of the moment thing. You know, versus I just might have this random spur of the moment feeling to punch someone in the face because I don't like them. But obviously, you know, you shouldn't give in to those bad urges, because there could be very bad consequences to it.
Right. I think it's important to be able to recognize an intrusive thought versus intuition. You know, like, intrusive thought, I've had the intrusive thought before, driving. I could just veer off the road, right now. Or like, being on a plane, I could just jump out of here and the plane ride would be over. But those are intrusive thoughts. They're not like intuitive. They're not constructive. They're not helpful. And so it's important to just kind of, to apply a value scale to what comes into your mind. Intuition may not always make sense. That's, sometimes you'll have an intuitive idea that, hey, maybe I stay home today. Maybe I shouldn't go to that thing. And you should definitely trust your intuition. But like, recognize that it is try to recognize that it is your intuition and not your ego or some other fear or something, keeping you or pushing you to do something,
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as just breaking something down to realize why you shouldn't give into an impulse. Like if I know I have an addiction with drinking, I have to break it down and say, okay, well, if I go to the bar, then now I've spent a bunch of money I shouldn't have. I'm gonna get hungover. I might get sick in the morning. Or if I drove there and then I decide I drive home, I might get into a car accident.
Yeah, and like it actually reminds me of like an older commercial where it was talking about like a series of events. Like if this happens, then this happens, and then if this happens, then this happens, and this so on and so forth. But yeah, like it's important to recognize, like, what are the direct consequences of me doing this thing or not doing this thing? If there aren't any, like, if you feel intuitively that, like, maybe you had plans, but you feel intuitively you should stay home, then, consider the consequences of you not going. If they're not that bad, then, maybe you could stay home. If they're, like, if you feel like, no, this is just my ego, this is me being scared to put myself out there, then maybe you should. You know?
A lot of times when we're deciding whether we should do a negative action or a positive action, sometimes all it takes is to convince ourselves logically that we shouldn't do something negative, and then to encourage ourselves to do something positive. So if I have the urge to do something nice for someone, it's I mean, or even if, let's say, I want to do something nice, but I don't really have the urge to do it. I just have to tell myself, well, okay, if I do this, I know it'll cheer up this person, or I know maybe down the line it'll bring about more positive things my way, or just help them out, and just so
Yeah. You can also think of it like, if you're someone who wants to make a change in your world, you have to start with your immediate surroundings. And if you want to do something nice for somebody else, that does make a change. That has an impact, which, that impact is, one thing affects another thing affects another thing. It goes further than you know. So, just if you're someone who wants to make a difference, start by making that difference close to home. Start by doing things which help around your neighborhood, or help around your work, or help around like your house, around your family. Help your friends, and start taking small actions to help whatever your cause is. And really, just like step by step, eventually you'll start to see the difference that you make just doing small things.
Yeah, love and kindness easily branches off if you make the effort to do so. And it says in the Bible, love your neighbor. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone in my vicinity is my neighbor.
Right.
So that being said, if you see somebody that is in need, show them love and kindness, do something good for them, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to necessarily be anything financial, just a simple, hi, how are you doing? Or just telling them, hey, have a good day, or whatever.
Yeah, holding space for people can mean a lot.
Yeah.
Just letting them talk.
Yeah, or even that, just kind of listening to someone's problems. If somebody is having a bad day that you know, even if it might not necessarily someone you might not really like or really agree with, just sometimes hearing them out, you get to understand them more, and then you get to realize that, they're not a bad person after all, and I feel bad, it puts a certain guilt in your heart that I wish I hadn't have had this thought of wanting to kill this person or to steal from them, or, just to really get to know somebody that you may or may not be romantically interested in. it's not healthy to have sexual relations with everybody that that
Without
is
getting to know them.
right, without getting to know them, because that brings about unhealthy relationships. Because then at that point you don't love the person, you just love the pleasure that they might be able to give you.
Right, and also just in general, getting to know people helps in situations like that, in that you don't always know what you're getting into with somebody. You don't know when the person that you sleep with for a one-time stand is a very obsessive person who is going to stalk you across the country. You don't know that that isn't going to turn into something more, or it isn't going to become toxic in some way in your life. You don't know that person isn't going to call out to you and make things awkward when you're on a date with someone you actually care about. And just say something completely inappropriate and ruin things for you. These things can have other consequences that aren't always immediately obvious. It's just important to recognize that.
Yeah, and oftentimes desire is a huge motivating factor when someone's doing something wrong and negative. I like, if it's the sexual desire,
Right.
that's pretty obvious and immediate. Or I have this, I have an envious desire for somebody else's belongings, so I feel like, well, I want what they have, so I'm going to take it since I can't provide for it myself.
I feel like it's not wrong to have desires, right? Like, desires are completely natural. It's how you express them. Like, for example, that jealousy that you're speaking about, like the idea of wanting someone else, or wanting to take something someone else has, or wanting someone else to have less. Instead, you can channel that in a more constructive way and be like, I want to have what they have, so I'm going to push myself to put myself out there and to maybe apply myself to become the kind of person that they are, to become, as well off or what have you, to reach their heights rather than taking it from them to give it to myself. And in the same way, there are, the best way to fulfill sexual desire is by finding someone who fits with you. Honestly, it's better than, just on its own. I mean, it may be fulfilling in the moment, and what happens between two people consensually is fine, but it's honestly better to pay attention to what situations you get yourself involved in, and if you want to stay in those kinds of situations, what people you want to be around, and how they might affect you in the future. If you want to get involved in that way, you should prepare yourself for the consequences to come. And you should know that you put yourself in that situation. So it's not something that you should blame them if they come on to you during a date, or if they stalk you or what have you. It's not entirely their fault that you got involved with them. And so, like, whatever consequences are, you'll have to deal with them. And so it's better to recognize consequences before they happen rather than once things are already done, and pretend that they don't exist, that nothing's going to happen to me, nothing's going to change.
It's always better to recognize the consequences in foresight rather than hindsight. If like if I try to figure out, okay, if I do this, what are the consequences, and should I do this, rather than looking back on it later with, oh, well, I should have done this. No, it's too late. Now it is what it is. And so and that is difficult, especially when we more often than not, we can't see the full scope of
the full picture. Yeah.
Right. We can't always see the full picture, so a lot of times that is hard. But if you can at least get a general grasp, if I do this, this is going to happen, so I shouldn't do it. That's just a good baseline, so that this probably isn't a good idea, so I can just halt myself from doing these actions based on the impulses that I might be currently feeling.
Yeah. All right, I think we've covered that pretty thoroughly. Anything else that you feel like we can add, or?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us. Namaste to you all. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and see you next time.